Welcome back to the second channel. Today we have some extremely exciting news to discuss, which is the 30th anniversary collection. Now usually I am not someone who buys a lot of modern Pokemon cards, but the anniversary sets are an exception to that. Because the anniversary sets are known now based on celebrations, and now the 30th anniversary celebration collection, we get reprints of old cards. And just today they have almost accidentally announced, I believe, 30 cards to look at. Rather, 29. We'll get into that. So here is the booster pack. Grok, generate me a booster pack image, please. It's pretty bad. However, in their official showcase, they showed us Charizard and Pikarom, cards that we already knew were coming back in February, when they initially teased the 30th anniversary set. We saw cards like Genesect EX, cards like Charizard, Pikarom, Uxie, as well as Solgaleo GX, and others. Today, on the Japan's 30th anniversary celebration website, they actually showed us all of them. Now, if this was the intention or not is a good question. However, in this, we got leaked all of the 30 cards that are going to be in the reprint sets. Now, there's also other things, but if you just watch this video real quick right here, we see a bunch of cards fly by, and that tells us what we're going to get. So I don't really care about the future stuff much. These cards do not really matter to me. If this is your kind of jam, sure, I don't like these at all. Though the Mew EX is playable, so I hope there's some sort of lower rarity print of it. What we did see there is 30 cards quickly flash across the screen. Now, this is not guaranteed confirmed. However, they have confirmed 2 of the cards of those 30 that they shown, with others being teased earlier this year. And they showed 30 cards in a set that has a press release that tells you that 30 cards are going to be in their classic collection reprints. It's pretty obvious that we now know the 30 cards that are in the set. So going over them one by one is what we're going to do today, talking about them a little bit. As you guys know, I did a full series talking on Twitter about each of the original Celebrations cards and their importance, and then I turned that into a video. And now we get to go over it here. Pikachu from base set is actually nothing really to talk about other than the fact that it is a Pikachu, and it's the first Pikachu in English. In Japan, there was actually a Pikachu before base set, which caused some controversy when they released this, quoting it as the first Pikachu in quotes. And in Japan, they were pointing out that there was actually a Pikachu promo card that came out ahead of their base set, but obviously for us that is not relevant. Charizard is getting reprinted once again. We see that right here. We all knew Charizard was going to be in the set. Even though it was in 25th anniversary, it's going to also be in 30th anniversary because they can just not stop printing this card. Everyone at this point should just stop complaining about them printing Charizard, because they're just going to do it anyway. Much ado about nothing in that case. I was fine with them printing Charizard, though. I'll also go over my own lineup and stuff that's missed at the end, because there was a couple things that they did kind of skip over, which I'm a little sad about. But I think in general they did a pretty good job here, outside of course, that there has to be Charizard. They put Pikachu, sure. And actually the first interesting one we see is Misty from Gym Heroes. So we have 1 card from Gym Heroes and 1 card from Gym Challenge in this set. So both gym sets represented. And Misty is one of the 8 original gym leaders, as well as being one of the Holo Trainers. Unfortunately, it's not one of the better Holo Trainers from the set. In the original Celebrations, we saw Here Comes Team Rocket as a reprinted card, which is an iconic card, but also not very good. So I was hoping if they were going to reprint in their trainer, that they would reprint Rocket's Sneak Attack, or the Rocket's Trap, which are the 2 best like rare Holo Trainer cards from this era. Unfortunately, we did just get Misty. Misty, kind of iconic, kind of cool. In terms of meta viability, not really there, unless you're maybe playing like a Misty's Poliwhirl deck in Prop 15-3. We have Erica's Jigglypuff, though, which is actually a good card. I'm okay with them reprinting Erica's Jigglypuff. It's a little tough when you're looking at gym era stuff because most of the gym stuff didn't really get them any chances to succeed between the metagame at the time just being super volatile, them trying out things like Prop 15.3, weird game issues. It's pretty degenerate. Rocket Zapdos is, of course, kind of like the all-star gym card that everyone knows if you played competitive back then. I wasn't even alive back then. That was a year before I was born. But if you played competitive back then, Rocket Zapdos is the guy everyone knows. The other one that I think is most infamous in this case is Erica's Jigglypuff from back then. Because of that pulled punch doing 40 damage for just a double colorless energy. This was a donk attack. There was plus power back then, which worked like the fighting Gatorade that Lucario uses now, where you just boost the damage of your attacks, in this case with plus power by 10. So you're able to pull punch for like 70 damage pretty easily on the first turn of the game. Now it was kind of difficult. You did have to like pilfer through your deck, but you could just rip your opponent's hand out at the same time that you're doing this with cards like Rocket Sneak Attack, like the Rocket's Trap. And basically make it, even if you don't donk their only Pokemon in play, you'll put them down to like maybe one Pokemon in play with 0 cards in hand. So this card was good for that, and I do think it does deserve the reprint. It is not a very expensive card, which is a little bit of a shame, reprinting it as like this important piece, you know, where otherwise there, you know, could be more expensive cards for retro reprinted, but I don't think it's a bad choice. Then we have Sneasel, one of the best choices. Sneasel was unfortunately left out of the original Celebrations Classic collection. In my opinion, it's like the 26th or 27th card that really should have been in the set. It was even in the Creatures starter deck from back in the 25th anniversary, which was a deck of 30 cards that they gave to the Creatures employees and different artists. All the cards in there are worth several thousands of dollars. Essentially, they made up like a sham of a deck, and you were designed to play it, but obviously no one did because the cards are collectible and expensive. Now, I did release a video on Sneasel not that long ago even, so I'm not going to go too far into Sneasel, but essentially Sneasel is the original best Dark type alongside like Murkrow from Neo Genesis. Dark type was immediately broken when it came out due to the special darkness energy, giving you a plus 10 damage when you attach the special darkness energy to it. Even though you could only play 4 darkness energy in your deck, you could also play rainbow energy to help pay for the attack. And beat up is just the most ridiculous attack possibly of the entire like WotC era. It just does so much damage considering the average HP of Pokemon back then was like 70 or 80. As you can see, Sneasel right here, fully evolved Pokemon, is 60. And beat up is capable of doing 60 damage for even if we only get 2 coin flips out of 6, which you're most likely going to get 3, which is going to do 60 base. Obviously the special dark's adding damage, no weakness, no retreat cost, good resistance. It's one of the best cards ever printed. It's also the first card ever banned from the Western play scene for gameplay reasons. There's other cards banned like Birthday Pikachu because you can just lie and say your birthday is today to get a bonus. So stuff like that was banned. Ancient Mew was banned, but Sneasel was the first one banned for like game balance in the year 2002. Then we have Shining Celebi. Shining Celebi is an interesting pick. I own this card because I am a Celebi collector, so in some cases I am happy to see a Celebi card. In my wallet's case, I am not happy to see a Chase Celebi card. I'm a big fan of Celebi cards that cost like 9 cents, and I hate having to spend like $100 on Celebi cards that come out nowadays, but regardless, Shining Celebi is a pretty good pick. Hironobu Yoshida, I believe, is Celebi's designer, the illustrator of this card. I believe also designed Celebi, and it's part of the original Shining mechanic, which did not make an appearance in the original Celebration set. Now, the Shinings were not competitively viable, with the exception of, I believe, Raichu has seen some renewed interest in some of the more niche formats like Neo-On, which is not really played, mainly just because all the Shining Pokemon have these really awkward energy costs. As you can see here, there's 3 different types of energy on this card, and back then they didn't have cards like Crispin or Mr. Beast Ring or, you know, all kinds of like energy acceleration cards that we do nowadays. Energy acceleration is much more limited, and the payoff of these attacks is also not that good. So we're going to see that with Crystal as well. These Pokemon were typically not that good, but very cool to actually see Shinings in there. And that's something you kind of will notice with this set, is they very much set out to fix a lot of the things they missed the first time around in Celebrations 1, which one of them was being there was no Shinings. Another gimmick that was completely unrepresented in the first set was the Crystal Pokemon, which, there we go. And Crystal Lugia was confirmed a while ago to be there from when we got the sneak peek in February, and this is another card that I'm actually very happy about. It's probably a card I won't be able to afford. I will not be completing this set because, well, first of all, it's just ridiculously big, but also they tailored this one much more towards collectors. If you did watch their trailer today, it was like 3 minutes of pure, unadulterated collector slop that I can't afford. And Lugia is one of those things, very cool. Maybe I'll be able to pull it, but I'm probably not even going to open that many packs. I'm not really a pack opener. But I'm happy that Crystal type is getting some representation. There is no e-reader series cards from the actual 3 e-card sets in the original set, so I'm happy to see that get some representation as well. Next up we have Delcatty, another fantastic choice here. Delcatty is a staple Pokemon in both 2004 and nowadays sees a little bit of play in RSBK, but also historically saw play with its reprint in 2007. And it's used for that energy draw Poke Power, which lets you discard 1 energy card from your hand and draw 3. Really, really good engine. Especially in 2004, there is the Delcatty Magneton engine, which is a 1-2 punch of a draw engine, where Magneton infinitely generates energies with its ability that discards 1 card from your hand for any 2 energy, or any 2 basic energy from your discard pile. And then it's called Magnetic Field. So you can just discard an energy and get back 2 basic energies once you have a couple of energy out in the discard pile. And then Delcatty uses that to draw some cards, and you can even attach extra energy for turn. It's great. Delcatty, of course, has also seen play in RSBK in Bomb Caddy. Now, I am not an RSBK fan, and I'm also not a fan of this particular deck, which is essentially a donk deck, but it is there. And RSBK got, not RSBK, Delcatty got reprinted in 2007 in Power Keepers, where it was good in decks like an Infercatty, and I also have it in my Magnezone Swampert deck, which is a deck list built by James G. You can use Delcatty with the reprint of Magneton as well. Very, very cool combo there. But now Magneton can evolve to Magnezone in 2007 Worlds, making a pretty cool deck. And also just Delcatty, very, very cool. Being able to work with Flygon EX at the time in colorless. There was Flycatty, Flygon, which accelerated energy from this card pile to itself. Wow, you can discard energy, draw 3. Pretty cool card. Very glad to see it here. I just did buy the last of the Delcattys I needed for 2004, so I feel a little stupid, but I will no doubt be picking up at least like a playset of these to have for the future. Next up we have Dark Tyranitar. No doubt EX block players are excited to see Dark Tyranitar. This is just one of the most broken cards they've ever designed. It is, all of its attacks are good, stupidly good in fact. And it just has the highest HP you can have on a single prizer. It has a resistance. It was good in every single format that it existed in back in 2005 and 2006, and now in RSBK as well. The only reason it's not good in 2007 is because it doesn't exist in 2007. Otherwise, it would probably still be good. Dark Tyranitar, huge HP. Again, that special Darkness energy was still around at the time, which made its attacks do 10 more damage, but it's mainly just great for that spinning tail attack, doing 20 to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. You're able to power that up with a single copy of Scramble energy, counting as 3 of any energy when you're behind, and you're able to avoid taking prize cards, which makes it awkward for your opponent. Most popular deck with this is called Bombtar, where you blow up an Electrode to give your opponent 2 prize cards, and then you get a bunch of energy back from the discard pile to attach to your Tyranitars. So you get to force your opponent to take prizes so that you can use quote-unquote comeback cards and abuse them as I'm going to win more cards against your opponent, and basically if you just pull it off right, you're just going to win the game, because Bombtar is just knocking out 3 of these is almost impossible, is the best way to put it. Just really, really good card, and it's actually pretty expensive as well. I have a couple of World Championship prints of this card in my 2006 Bombtar deck. It's my least favorite 06 deck because, to be honest, this deck is not fun to play or play against, but I did have to own it because it is the best deck in 06 meta-wise. So I built it, and I would not mind replacing my World Championship copies with some real ones from the set, which would look a little bit better. It's also a great artwork, by the way. Next up we have Scissor EX, kind of out of left field. I was not expecting Scissor EX to be their choice, but I am fine with it. Scissor EX was quite good historically, and it was also a deck that was very well represented in Japan. Some might say it's a lucky sack deck, because it is usually played as a quad deck. Now we saw this also see play with other Pokemon, so in 2007 season this was played in the Scythe deck, which did not end up being played to US Nationals, but was a theoretical Swampert Scissor deck. Swampert accelerates energy from the discard pile to Scissor, so you can power it up, meaning that the 4 metal energy limit is not a big deal. We also saw this deck was actually played to second place at US Nationals in 2007 with Jay Hornung with Metagross Scissor. Metagross also accelerates metal energy from the discard pile to your active Pokemon, but does not end your turn like Swampert EX does, so you just power up Scissor, use Scissor, Scissor's big, Scissor's good. And then at 2007 Worlds, we saw the Scissor deck that we're more familiar with in RSPK as well, which is just Quad Scissor Go Burr. Now, Quad Scissor is still pretty good in RSPK as well, still a top deck, so it's going to be nice to have pretty readily available access to copies of Scissor EX on the market. I'll probably pick up a playset myself just in case I'd ever decide to play it in 2007 or in RSPK, but it's kind of a glue eater deck, really not my favorite. In 2007 it's even better, I'd say, than RSPK, because in 2007 you get actually good like deck pilfer cards. One of the things about EX block is the entire EX block doesn't really have cards that are good at like going through your deck really quickly. Whereas in 2007 you get Pokedex handy in Diamond and Pearl base, and you also get plus power for just a much better boosting card to stack on top of Strength Charm, which is another boosting card. But Strength Charm is a tool card that you can only use 1 of, whereas plus power is a attachable item card that you can use up to 4 of at once. Scissor also gets regular metal energy in 2007. It really benefits from that Diamond and Pearl base set, and Quad Scissor EX ended up taking top 4 at Worlds. I believe Yuki Akamura took it that year. I could be wrong on that though. So if you love Elmer's Glue, this is the deck for you, and you'll get yourself some readily available reprints. One of the things I was really hoping they would put in here would be Delta Ray EX, just because Delta Ray EX is very good in both 2007 and RSPK as well, but is an EX that is incredibly expensive due to it being a Rayquaza card, a Delta species card, all of that. Seems like RSPK fans are going to be paying out a couple $1,000 in the future for their Rayler decks. Next up we have Delta Metagross. This was actually a card I predicted a couple of years ago would get reprinted. Before I kind of went all in on let's reprint Delta Ray, I was thinking Delta Metagross would also be a good choice as one of the best Delta species Pokemon from the Delta species set. Metagross was good in both 2006 and 2007. Nowadays in RSPK, not nearly as good, but it kind of exists from what I understand. Delta Control is great. It lets you look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You get to keep 1 of those, and then you put the other 3 to the bottom. So essentially like a Dracloak or Uxie trade-off on steroids, because you get to see 4 cards and choose 1 of them instead of just seeing 2 cards. And then you just use multiple of these abilities once you have multiple Metagross in play. This also paired well with the Metal Accelerating Metagross that I mentioned when I was talking about Scissor. Because its Crush and Burn attack discards as many energy cards as you like attached to your Pokemon in play, and does 30 plus 20 for each energy you discarded. Now this damage modifier is actually very low compared to what we're used to seeing nowadays. You would expect even maybe 30 times, but I promise you with Delta Dragonite, which accelerates lightning from the discard pile, it's essentially Dynamo or Electric. It accelerates lightning from the discard pile, and then you also have that Metal Acceleration Metagross. You can very easily just chain together like 3 110 damage knockouts with this deck. It's also one of my favorite Delta species cards. It has just a beautiful artwork. I have the Meta Knight deck built. It's very cool. And this was just played in 2007 even just as an engine with the Metal Acceleration Metagross. Decks were playing like 3 Beldums, and then they'd play like 2 of the Metal Acceleration guy and 1 of this guy for consistency, so sure, why not? Good throughout multiple formats. Not good in RSPK from what I understand anymore. That format is a lot high power. Instead of doing, 70 from discarding 2 energy, you could do 80 with a Flygon EX, or just play a deck that says fuck you to your opponent for playing any Pokepowers on their board. That's one of the weaknesses of the Meta Knight deck, being that it has like 6 Pokepowers in play at a time. Other than that, though, I'm pretty happy about this. Could have been Delta Ray, which I think would have been a better cost thing, but I did actually need one or more of these Metagross for my Meta Knight deck. I have one copy that's Japanese and one copy that's damaged, too damaged to play in English, so I am going to add one of these to my deck. Next up, we get to Diamond and Pearl with Palkia Level X. I think this is one of their more mediocre picks, but I think they were picking a lot of like cool legendary Pokemon to be a part of this time around. Now, we can't have Lux or Chomp. They did pick Lux Chomp in the last Celebration set as two of the best Level X's, but I think I wouldn't have minded seeing Flygon Level X or Uxie Level X over Palkia, because Palkia was okay. What Palkia does is it has Restructure, which it's a very weirdly worded thing because of double battles still existing in the game at the time, even if they weren't being used. But essentially, your opponent gets to gust you, and you get to gust them. Now, this was only basically used in decks that had a way to give their Pokemon free retreat, because otherwise, being able to let your opponent gust you means they can just pick one of your guys on the bench and bring it up, and then it doesn't have free retreat anymore. But if you, in the case of like Flygon in 2009, Flygon's Rainbow Float gives your Pokemon that are the same type as the energy attached to Flygon. So if I have a water energy attached to my Flygon, now my Palkia has free retreat. Now I can just free retreat any of my guys that they bring up. So if they bring up a Claydol to the active spot, I'll attach a fighting energy to Flygon and it can move out of the active spot. Meanwhile, I get to gust my opponent, and they don't get to control that until their turn. So I'm going to be able to like take a knockout or trap something. This was played to second place in 2009 World Seniors in the Stalgon deck. Was also played with Magnezone back in the day in 2008, because Magnezone can give your Pokemon with metal energy attached to it free retreat. I've also been trying this with Regigigas in 2008. It is also decent there. And then I'm trying to think if anything else played it. It wasn't a very commonly played card. It is an effect that's good, but it's also very specific. People have been testing it in 2010 with Gardevoir as of recent. I'm not entirely sold on the idea, but it is the idea of being able to gust with Gardevoir level X and, you know, Psychic Lock your opponent by targeting down whatever you want is incredibly broken. If it works, it's just a lot of pieces to get into play. It's an okay card. I actually did need another Palkia Level X for my Diamond and Pearl to Stormfront Gauntlet, because I have two decks in that gauntlet that actually use Palkia, and I only have two copies of Palkia, and one of them's being tested right now in 2010, so I don't mind the reprint in that regard, because it gives me another copy to work with. Now, the best reprint of all of them, by far, is Uxie. Collectors are going to hate this because this card looks boring, but Uxie is in the top 5 cards of all time, and it was arguably the biggest omission alongside Sneasel from the original Celebration set. Uxie is there for its setup, which lets you draw until you have 7 cards in your hand. When you play it from your hand into your bench, it is the strongest draw ability of all time. Now, obviously, Shaman was stronger in its respective formats, since Shaman was around at the same time of turn and burn cards like Ultra Ball, whereas Uxie existed in a lot of metagames that are metagames revolved around slow progression and locking your opponent, and that bench space is pretty valuable. But regardless, Uxie was in every single deck from the time it came out to the time it rotated, spare like 1 or 2 rogue decks that can't have Poke Powers in play. Uxie was that guy. And what it made it even better is that Uxie had an incredible level axe that it leveled up into that was both a great attacker, as well as it gave your Uxie the same ability as Dracloak. So that airmail style, look at the top 2, keep 1, put the other to the bottom effect was also on Uxie level X. So you turned your one-time draw liability into a permanent attacker and fixture on your board that helps you draw throughout the game. Uxie is getting up there in price as well. Uxie is currently, you know, if you look right now, they're like minimum $10. When I started building Retro, they were like $2 to $50 to $5 a piece in my first year. They've gotten pretty bad. This was one of the most needed reprints we could have had, and I am so glad this is in the set. I have probably about 9 different decks at this point that I'm just kind of sitting on, because I knew this Uxie, when it was teased in February, was going to be reprinted. So I've just been waiting for them to print Uxie. I'm a true Uxie believer, and I need this guy in my decks. So many copies, because I'm tired of spending like 10 to 15 bucks a copy for real ones. Next up, we have Grobat G, my guy. This was a very powerful card in the SP engine. Now, one of the things that makes it complicated with the SPs is they already picked both Lux and Chomp. The two most iconic SP Pokemon are Lux Chomp, the main attackers of the Lux Chomp deck. Luxray also very good in 2009. Garchomp also really good with all kinds of other attackers like Sableye and Dialga. Is Crobat the best choice for this spot? No, I think that it would have been better to put, if you put Palkia level X, you could have also put Dialga G level X, which is, Dialga G level X was used as like a slower, tankier threat, but it was good the entire time it was out. It was such a good Pokemon. To be fair, Crobat is also incredible. And the difference between Dialga G and Crobat is that Dialga was like kind of a star Pokemon for own deck, or Crobat's like this general support guy. I do not hate seeing Crobat at all, though. I'm pretty happy that it should hopefully bring the price of Crobats down. They are not super expensive, but they're getting up there. Crobat is mainly used for that Flash Bite. When you play Crobat down, you get to put 1 damage counter on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Really, really powerful Poke Power. And Toxic Fang is also a good attack, putting 2 damage counters with poison between turns. The SP decks have this card called Energy Gain that makes them able to use the attack for just 1 Psychic Energy. So you can use this to stall like a fighting Pokemon with your resistance. And then the most broken thing about Crobat is that there's a card called Poke Turn, which just lets you pick up one of your Pokemon SP and all cards attached. So you can, against a deck like Donphan Prime, bring up a Crobat and poison them. Donphan Prime's really bulky, and he does 60 damage, 80 damage if he boosts his damage with Expert Belt. But because of that resistance, Crobat will dodge a knockout. He'll get to poison the Donphan, and then you can just pick your Crobat up out of play and then reuse that Flash Bite. Lots of decks in both 2009 and 2010 were running Crobat just for that damage boost with like 4 copies of Poke Turn, or just some decks like my Regigigas deck. I just run 1 Crobat, and Super Scoop Up's already in the deck, so if I need an extra boost, I can Super Scoop Up, pick up the Crobat, and put it back down for an extra bit of damage. It won 2 World Championships in 2009 and 2010, I believe, because I believe it was in the Luxdrill deck. I could be mistaken. I'm like 90% sure it's in the Luxdrill deck. Let me just check my deck collection, because I have Luxdrill built. It is in the Luxdrill deck. So it does have 2 Worlds titles to his name. Would have had 3 if it was, printed, or if it survived until 2011, but it got emergency midseason rotated. Part of the reason that the emergency midseason rotation happened was because of Crobat creating donks when they turned off all restrictions on trainer cards in 2011. Crobat with Poke Turn made like actual donk strategies very likely. Next up, we have the Primes from Heart Gold Soul Silver, and they picked Gengar Prime. Now, Gengar Prime is not the most competitive of the Primes, but it is one of the most expensive. I would have preferred them picking Magnezone just because Magnezone is probably the best of the Primes, with a world title to its name, as well as being part of pretty much a viable deck for the entire time it was legal. Even until 2012, it took 2 spots at top 32 Worlds 2012, even after it was like thought to be dead. Gengar was never really that meta. There was one person who took it to top 32 of US Nationals, and it saw a lot of play pre-rotation, like mid-season rotation, paired with the other good Gengars from the Diamond and Pearl era. But what it's mainly here for, I think, is to represent the Lost Zone. So the Lost Zone is a place where when you put cards into the Lost Zone, they're just gone from the game. Unlike the discard pile, they can't be recovered. And the goal of the Lost Zone at this time, because the Lost Zone's kind of changed and every time it's brought back into the game, it does something like different based around it, is the Lost Zone at this time was based around using this Gengar to spam Hurl into Darkness to put your opponent's Pokemon into the Lost Zone. And then once they had 6 Pokemon into the Lost Zone, you just put a Stadium card in play that said you can just choose to win the game if your opponent has 6 Pokemon in the Lost Zone, which is crazy. Also, Gengar has that Catastrophe Pokebody. If Gengar's if your opponent gets knocked out, and Gengar's active, you get to put that Pokemon to the Lost Zone. So there was like a stall deck back in the day called Lost Score, where you just stall with Gliscor or hit and run with Gliscor. You get to choose which one until your opponent gets knocked out, and then you have Gengar in the active spot when they get knocked out. Or you use Curse Drop. You can spread 4 damage counters to kill something like a Cleffa with 30 HP and guarantee it goes to the Lost Zone because of that Catastrophe. Do I think it's the best choice for a Prime competitively? No. However, I kind of wanted to build Lost Gar for 2011. It will probably end up killing my Donchamp deck, which is a little sad because I like Donchamp, but it's not a very good deck. It's a sack deck. I guess Lost Gar is also a not very good sack deck, but it's a little bit more interesting mechanically at least. It's kind of a solitaire strategy, but I shouldn't be too down on it. I'm excited to build this. This is probably going to be one of the more expensive cards from the set, but I'm okay shelling out a little bit if it means getting 3 copies of this Gengar Prime so that I can play Lost Gar, because I have a 4th one. Next up, we got a Legend print, which was not included in the original set. We have Darkrai Cresselia Legend. Now, it's another Legend card that is not playable. Of the Legend cards, this is probably the least playable of them all. I believe every other Legend card saw some sort of play besides Darkrai Cresselia Legend, which is easily the worst. It does have a neat attack there called Lost Crisis, where you do 100 damage, and then if you knock out a Pokemon with that attack, they go to Lost Zone. A lot of attacks using the original Lost Zone were designed around putting Pokemon in the Lost Zone when you knock them out. Saw that with Gengar as well. These kind of effects are generally not very good. It's also very expensive, and this is a 2-prize Pokemon with bad weaknesses. Psychic and Fighting are probably the 2 worst weaknesses. I guess Colorless might be worse. At the time this card was printed. Those are like by far 2 of the worst. Psychic, Fighting, Colorless are like the 3 like I'd say deadly weaknesses to have. Very, very bad. And then the other attack is actually pretty good. You move the damage counters around your opponent's board. We've seen attacks like that on Tapu Lele promo during Sun and Moon be pretty good, but spread was not very, I don't think, very appreciated during the time that this came out. Not a lot of spread strategies. And why would you just use this rather than just in 2011 Worlds, you can play something like Yen Mega Kingdra, and why would you use that rather than just put more damage on the opponent's board? Just put it in the right places the first time, so you don't need to readjust that. However, this is a very cool looking card. This is not a card I'm going to be going after because I do already own a copy of this card in my collection, but it is one of the coolest artworks in the Pokemon TCG. Again, could have been Entei Raikou Legend for playability, or Rayquaza Deoxys Legend, which is the only legend to have a Worlds title, but this card does look really, really cool. So there's that at least. When I said there was 29 cards in the set, by the way, this is why, because this Legend card actually takes up 2 of the slots. I don't know how I feel about that. Being an unplayable card and taking up 2 slots, like, bro, you gotta move over. Moving on to Black and White. Now, Black and White got quite over-serviced, I'd say, in the last Celebration set. I was happy about it, but looking back, getting both Reshiram, Zekrom, and Mewtwo, that was quite a lot of love for Black and White. And they came back and printed even more love for Black and White with Full Art N. Now, this is one of my predictions for the cards that was going to get printed, being that they printed Rocket's Admin in the last Celebration set. And N is not just a big deal because it's one of the best supporter cards in the history of the game, like top 5 supporter cards of all time kind of thing. But N is also a big deal because this was the first ever Full Art supporter card. I do own 1 copy. I used to own a nice set of 3 for my decks. Nowadays, I only have my 1 because I just decided I didn't need the extras. But it's also one of the most beautiful artworks on any Full Art supporter. I still think this is like top 3 Full Art supporters of all time. I think my top 3 would be this N, the Copycat Full Art from Celestial Storm, and the Roxanne Full Art from Crown Zenith. I think are my 3 favorite Full Art supporters. This is such a gorgeous card. So good. I don't know if the texturing is going to be kind to it because in the English original printings of these, I'm not sure, maybe it's different in Japanese, these cards are very lightly textured. It's almost like a grainy texture, and it looks fantastic. They kind of messed up the Reshiram and Zekrom Full Arts from Celebrations 1 by giving them just a bunch of texture. It kind of looks gross. So we'll see if they mess up N, but as is, I'm very happy to see N reprinted. If these aren't too expensive, I would like to get 3 of them or 4 of them to have a playset. Next up, we have Raymond, Big Raymond. This guy was pretty good in 2013 and 2014 because he's just a big hitter guy. He was also the first viable Dragon type upon Dragon types being reintroduced to the game in Dragons Exalted, which is the set that Rayquaza came out. So Dragon Burst says discard all fire or lightning energy attached to Rayquaza, and it does 60 damage for each energy you discard in this way. In 2013, this paired with Electric, which could accelerate lightning energy from the discard pile to your benched Pokemon. So you just power up like 3 energy on a Rayquaza, then hit for 180. That one-shots basically everything in the 2013 metagame. That's not a wall. And then in 2014, Electric had rotated, so instead this got paired with Emboar for the Raybor deck, which did, then you attach as many fire energy from your hand to your Rayquaza as you like. It's a little bit worse because Raybor had a stage 2 supporting it instead of a stage 1's, but I still like Raybor Delphox quite a lot. It's one of my favorite decks in my collection. Now, do I think this need to be reprinted in terms of like cost-wise? No, but I'm perfectly fine with them reprinting this for the knowledge that like Japan players didn't get the Battle Arena decks. The reason that Rayquaza EX is so cheap in English is because of the Battle Arena decks that came out years ago at this point, which reprinted this Rayquaza, made it super accessible. Japan didn't get those. We did. I'm okay with them reprinting Rayquaza for future-proofing this for Japanese players to be able to play Black and White Retro. Next up, we have Jenny, which is either your least favorite card or your favorite card if you played at the time. This card was very dominant in 2014, winning the World Championships and being 3 of the top 4 decks at that World Championship, as well as just being a very dominant deck for the entire time it was around that season, and then also continuing its success in 2015, pairing with stuff like Seismitoad and Exeggutor and Manectric, all sorts of different ways you can play Genesect. Because of that broken red signal ability, when you attach a plasma energy from your hand to this Pokemon, you may switch when your opponent's bench Pokemon with his or her active. So it's a Lysander Boss's Orders effect on an energy attachment. Broken. They have not brought this kind of ability back since on a basic. Maybe they brought it back on a stage 1, stage 2, I don't know. But as a basic, this is the only time this ability has ever been printed like this. Plasma energy is an energy that does nothing, but that's fine. It just gets effects when it attaches or is attached to Pokemon, like with Plasma Pokemon. And then Megalocannon is an okay attack, does 120 to win your opponent's bench Pokemon. But the main reason that this attack is here is because, or the main reason we care about this guy is because of G-Booster, which was an A-Spec card that attached to Genesect, that gave him an attack that did 200 damage and discarded 2 energy from Genesect. And your goal with the Virgin deck was just to use G-Booster like 3 times in 2 prize matchups, and in 1 prize matchups you can use things like Megalocannon to spread against your opponent, with Muscle Band to help boost your damage up a little bit to take key knockouts. Virgin was a dominant deck, very, very good. It was also one of my first decks that I was able to play actually competitively. Back in the day, I played stuff like Kling Klang, and I played stuff like Virizion back in 2011, but I didn't know what I was doing, nor were the lists like even formatted for standard. Virgin was one of the first decks I took to a like city championship back in the day. Did I do good? No. I got like 10th or something like that out of like 14 people. But I was playing like a 2-2 Virgin deck with just cards I'd pulled. So I have fond memories of playing with this guy, accidentally stumbling on one of the best decks in history by myself. He deserves a spot in the set. I'm a little sad it's not the full art, though, which looks awesome. Also, this is a card that's getting expensive, so I'm very glad to see that reprinted. Mega Gardevoir EX Fairy is from Primal Clash, so this is repping the Fairy type, of course. And this card was okay in late 2016, early 2017. Brilliant Arrow does 30 times the number of Fairy energy attached to all of your Pokemon. You paired this with Xerneas, which had Geomancy, to attach 2 Fairy energy from the deck to your Pokemon on your bench. So you just stack a bunch of energy in play and then just hit for a bunch of damage. This card was never that great, but it saw some play in late 2016 after all the viable 1-prizers like Night March that could one-shot it were not that good anymore. So it just kind of saw play to one-shot things like big, dark, Evoltol decks that relied on hitting a lot of damage, but this Pokemon was resistant to dark, so you can just one-shot them, trade 1 Mega Gardevoir for 2 2-prizers on their side, and it felt pretty good. I think they should have reprinted the other Mega Gardevoir, though. There's another Mega Gardevoir from Steam Siege that was much better and also has a dual typing and a shiny color. And that card is really cool with this Despair Ray letting you discard your benched Pokemon to boost the damage of your attack. That card is iconic, cool, and also has a Fairy type rep and dual type rep. This card, not so much. Also forgot to mention that they did not do an A-Spec in this set of reprints. But I'm not surprised not seeing A-Spec considering that they reprint A-Spec still in Japan's expanded toolkits. So anyone who's expecting anything for expanded, kind of false hope, considering that they can just reprint cards in the expanded toolkits over in Japan that they print to keep the format alive. Over here, we don't get anything because we don't play expanded. Next up, we have Greninja Break, the James G Classic Special, his favorite card. He's so happy. Greninja Break is the best of the Break Pokemon by quite a mile. There's other ones that are good, like Trevenant Break was really, really good, and Zoroark Break was quite good as well. But Greninja Break was just a good deck to some extent throughout the entire time it was legal. Got second at Worlds 2016, and then also was pretty solid throughout the 2017 season. Fell off a bit in 2018, especially with stuff like Zoropod around, but came back and got like 3 spots in the top 32 at that year's World Championships right before it rotated. So Greninja Break really kind of proving everyone wrong because people just refused to put this card down. Now, Break Pokemon were an interesting mechanic that played on top of fully evolved Pokemon like level X's, and it gave them an extra like ability or attack as well as more HP. Greninja Breaks in this case, it's a deck where you set up slowly, but then once you get your Greninja Breaks online, you can just make massive comebacks while also ability locking your opponent. It's a pretty cool deck to play, though sometimes playing against it is feels like your opponent's just kind of doing what they want and relying on the luck of the draw. But if there's going to be a Break Pokemon reprinted, which I really hoped there was because they skipped that last time, Greninja Break was the guy to do it. Next up, we have Solgaleo GX. Not really that meta viable, so I was very confused why they reprinted it. Solgaleo saw some play. It's decent for its Sunsteel Strike attack, doing 230, which one-shots most Pokemon at the time for our 2 prizers. With a Choice Band, you increase that to 260 to one-shot anything at the time, since 250 was the max HP that you could have. Solgaleo does have that. This card was always like niche, like one of kind of thing. Some people played it in their decks. Soulburst GX was kind of good. It took top 8 at like an Australian regional in early 2017, but this card was really never all it's chopped up to be. Other than Mewtwo and Mew copying Soulburst in like the expanded format was pretty good. Because Mewtwo and Mew is a basic Pokemon that can copy this attack if Solgaleo's in the discard pile, and that was pretty good. But Solgaleo GX itself, never really the guy. Kind of like Palkia, just seems there to be like a cool legendary Pokemon more than playability. It's not bad, but it's not good either. They skipped Zoroark GX, which really should have been the GX of choice. As Zoroark GX won the World Championship in 2018. Probably would have won in 2019 too if it was still around, because Zoroark's broken. Buzzwole GX was another GX printed. They actually picked 3 GXs for this set. A little greedy of them, but I'm okay with it. Buzzwole is a representative of the Ultra Beast, and it was a very good card throughout 2018 and early 2019. Using its fighting typing to answer stuff like Zoroark, which was the strongest GX of all time, and answering later on Pikarom, which would come out in the following set. Ultra Beasts are interesting because every single Ultra Beast has an attack based on prize cards. So there's some that say if your opponent has so many prize cards, they get this effect. If you have this many prize cards, you get this effect. Buzzwole's is just aggression. It does 40 damage for each of your remaining prize cards. He's in there to get out of the gate swinging with like a 280 damage attack, and then just spend the rest of the game trying to swing more. That's all Buzzwole does, is just massive damage. Really good card throughout 2018, 2019, early 2019. Speaking of early 2019, we have Pikachu and Zekrom GX, otherwise known as the card that features on my thumbnail talking about how this card ruined the game. One of the most powerful cards of all time in the history of the game. Doesn't look like that maybe nowadays, but back then it was ridiculous. 240 HP on a basic, very big. I just talked about Solgaleo having 250 as a stage 2. That was the biggest it got. 240 on a basic. There was even bigger tag teams. Tag team Pokemon were 3 prize, all basic Pokemon. So they just kind of deleted evolution from the game. Like, why would you evolve when you could just play this? Now, there was still evolution decks seeing play alongside these, but we would see a lot of those kind of fade out near the end of Sun and Moon as a lot of the evolution support fell off. And part of the reason that evolution decks initially suffered when Pikachu and Zekrom came out is because of its Tag Bolt attack. Stage 2s are really good in Sunlot format, which is the format before Pikarom came out. Then this card comes out and it does Tag Bolt 200 and 170. And a common engine in these evolution decks was to put down Ninetales, which has 200 HP, to find your item cards to set up a stage 2, and you'd use Tapu Lele to set up early, which has 170. So if you did that, Pikarom would just take 4 prizes in 1 turn. This card is evil, it's gross, and it can pull off these attacks on turn 1 thanks to the ways to cheat energy into play. One of my least favorite cards of all time. But competitively deserving of this spot, yes. Zacian V, another one of my least favorite cards of all time. Brave Blade does 230. Intrepid Sword lets you find metal energy from the top 3 cards of your deck, but you also just get to draw the cards. You just get to draw 3 and end your turn. This was played in stall decks just for that ability to draw 3, which is crazy. But not only do you get to draw 3, you also get to attach energy cards. There was times where your opponent would just find 3 metal energy and attach them to their Zacian. Ridiculous. Brave Blade, also a really strong attack. This was played with a bunch of different decks, but the most notable of them was ADP Zacian, which is a deck that aimed to use Arceus and Dialga and Palkia Tag Team GX to GX attack Altered Creation, which would make you take 1 more prize card when you take knockouts for the rest of the game, as well as boost your damage by 30. And then you would just attack with attack twice to take 3 prize cards each time on like weaker 2 prize Pokemon, and you just win the game without really interacting with your opponent's board. Also saw Luke Metal Zacian in 2020. Sorry, I need a drink. Luke Metal Zacian was a bit of a slower deck because Luke Metal made all of your Pokemon take 30 less damage for the rest of the game. Also discard your opponent's energy. And then you would like build up to either a big Luke Metal, or you'd use Zacian or Zamazenta as your attackers, which are self-sufficient. Zacian V also came out with Metal Saucer. For some reason they thought that was a good idea, which attached extra metal energy to it. This card was very, very good, definitely deserving of a spot, even if I know it's like not an expensive card that people want a reprint of eventually if people build Sword and Shield formats for Retro. Like, it's a notable card. If you're going to print a card from Sword and Shield, you basically have to print this guy. Raikou Amazing Rare was an interesting choice. I don't know if I agree with it, but it's cool seeing it. The Amazing Rare Pokemon are these really interesting Pokemon that have no extra like text to them, but they do have just these ridiculous attack costs. Some of them have as many as 5 energy in their attack costs, 3 of them being different types in each case, and they have these cool like rainbow artworks. Raikou was actually one of the best of the Amazing Rare Pokemon. Amazing Shot did 120 and 120 to your opponent's bench Pokemon. Now, the Amazing Rares are pretty awful for almost their entire lifespan until at the very end of Sword and Shield. We got the Lost Zone decks, which were able to power up these Amazing Rares, and we got Lugia V-Star, which were also able to power up the Amazing Rares. And suddenly, when you can just accelerate as many energy from the deck as you like to your Pokemon, with things like what you call it, Mirage Gate, which accelerates 2 different types of basic energy. Ooh, look what that works well with. Suddenly you can power these guys up instantly, and they're the best attackers ever printed. Lugia accelerates as up to 4 special energy from the deck each turn to its Pokemon, so you can accelerate your Aurora energy, which counts as any type of energy. And suddenly you can instantly power up these guys, the most broken attackers ever printed, when you can power them up. I don't agree with them being printed here just because they were pretty bad for almost the entire time they were around, but I don't hate seeing them here either. I can't be too mad. They're pretty cool. These are aesthetically some of my favorite cards. I think I own the full set of them. Maybe I got rid of these at some point. I don't know. I don't look at any of my Sword and Shield cards, but these are Pokemon that I thought were pretty cool, if nothing else. I might have gotten rid of all of them. I think I might have gotten rid of all of them because I think I got rid of my Rayquaza, and then I was just like, well, I might as well not even own the rest. So weird choice, but sure, I'm okay with that. He was competitively good. He's cool looking. Mew VMAX, obviously, this card's not even like 2 years gone from the game, and it was great. It won Worlds. It dominated the entire time it was around. It was a very, very strong deck because it could draw up to 24 cards each turn, allowing it to just do whatever it wanted. It could boost its damage, it could spread damage, it could snipe damage, it could one-shot things, it went through walls. Mew VMAX was only limited by the fact of how much people tacked to beat Mew VMAX. And if the second people didn't tack to beat Mew VMAX, you got 4 of them ready to win Worlds. Great card. Definitely deserving of the reprint. I was surprised they used Mew for a more recent card instead of printing like Mew Gold Star, which is something that they did not do. They did not print any Gold Stars in this set, which is a little sad. Arceus V-Star, the best of the V-Star Pokemon. Initially, Palkia V-Star, Lugia V-Star, Giratina V-Star came out later, arguably better cards than Arceus, but Arceus did win Worlds, and it has that going for it. Arceus gets to search any 2 cards with that V-Star power, which is a once per game power. You just get to search your deck for any 2 cards. It's broken. It lets you use that attack very easily to power up your Pokemon for the rest of the game. Arceus, extremely dominant in early 2022, kind of fell off to being more of a rogue deck for the rest of its lifespan due to increased power creep, but was always somewhere in the metagame. There was never like a metagame where Arceus wasn't doing something when it was around, it felt like. Actually, at least until the end of 2023. 2024 was a little bit shakier for Arceus, but even in early 2024, Arctina was still putting up results. Like this, Arceus was just always doing something, bro. He just does not give in. And part of the reason this was good is because you would just use its ability and then just shut down your opponent's abilities past the peak for the rest of the game. So you were using the most broken ability that you wanted and then saying that your opponent couldn't use any of theirs. Now, some people are thinking that the set is getting a little recent because this card's from 2022. But if you think about it, the last Celebration set had Tapu Lele GX in there, which is a card from 2017. So in the 5-year span, we've moved 5 years forward. That makes sense to have a card from 2022 in the Celebration set, and Arceus is a good choice. Now, a card I don't think is a good choice is our final card, which is the Magikarp Art Rare. This, to me, is a baffling choice, both because it has no competitive viability whatsoever. It is just a collector slop card, but also because it's more recent than I'd like. It's from 2023, and this set realistically going up to 2022 makes sense. 2022 is reasonably where you could expect this set to go up to. I think that it should have stopped at 2022, and now we have Scarlet Violet cards in here. I don't know how I feel about that, especially when it's in random unplayable art rare. To me, art rares are kind of the disease of modern Pokemon. They are so pretty to look at, but collectors have just absolutely ruined prices of things. Cards that should be like $5 to $10 are now $500. Makes it a lot less fun to collect literally anything because now everything has to be worth money. Everything's some underrated binder banger or something like that. Instead of just being a card that people can enjoy, some people have to hype it up, scalp it, mark it, buy it out to get it to increase in price. That way they can trade it like insider trading. And this is one of the prime examples of one of the first cards that got insider traded, was Magikarp. Not really a card I wanted to see printed in this set, and it really opens up the gates to some ugly future reprints if they do another kind of these sets in the future. Let's take a look at the cards that I wanted to be reprinted, or that I was predicting would be reprinted in just a second. Alright, so here we actually have my cards that I had predicted would be in the Celebrations reprint set. I actually got a lot more right than I was expecting, but I also got a lot wrong. So this was a picture of 30 cards I put at the end of my every 25th anniversary Pokemon card explained video. I do recommend watching that if you're interested in why they picked the original 25 cards for the original Celebrations. And there's some key things that I had that they didn't have that I want to talk about here. Now, one thing I'll say is that I got Genesect right, I got Uxie right, I got N right, I got Zacian right, I got Pikarom right, I got Buzzwole right, and I got Greninja right, Sneasel right, I got Lugia Crystal even right, got one of the collector cards right, and I got Bombtar right. So I got actually quite a few of these correct. That's, let me see now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I got 1/3 accuracy on guesses of cards I thought would be reprinted. I did guess Delta Metagross on a way earlier one I posted on Twitter, but I'm not going to count that. This was a card, you know, if I were to like guess Delta Metagross here, you'd have to put a Rayquaza somewhere. They're going to fit a Mega Rayquaza somewhere in the mix. Let's talk about the stuff that they did not get that I would like, that I would have liked. Call Energy is a card that's a staple. I didn't think they were going to reprint this. It was more of a wishful thinking because it's a very expensive and competitively viable card in all of the DP formats. And it's very expensive, necessary like 4 of in a lot of decks. And 2010 is really the only format where you can get away with, 2010 and MD Call, sorry, are like the formats you can get away without playing 4 copies in your deck. if you're playing an earlier format, you're playing four copies in your deck most of the time, unless you have strict energy requirements. So that would have been nice, but again, it's kind of a weird energy card. They probably didn't want to print this for that reason. Tropical Beach is one that I also really wanted because, you know, like, it's a super playable, like, promo card that's like $500. It's also super iconic as, like, the first playable Worlds promo. I think they could have printed this. I'm a little sad they didn't. And Hold-On Transceiver is another weird one, a trainer card that probably should have been printed. It lets you find any Hold-On supporter card from your pile or your deck. It's a card that goes for about $25 a copy, and it's in a 4 of in so many different EX era decks, and it's also iconic of the Hold-On engine. But again, I think they tried to limit how many trainer cards they're doing, because a lot of collectors got tilted by the original Celebration set having things like Claydol, and rightfully tilted by things like Imposter Oak that really don't make sense anywhere for any reason. So there's all sorts of things that tilted collectors. So I'm guessing that's why they chose to focus less on the competitive trainer card angle, which unfortunately means we did not get a Transceiver reprint, which was definitely, I'd say this was number 1 on most people's list for cards to reprint, was Transceiver. Another thing we didn't see is Shaman. We didn't see any regular X and Y EXs, just the Mega Gardevoir. Shaman, I think, was deserving of a reprint, but I'm okay with it being skipped. Maybe save for next time. Darkrai is also a Pokemon that probably should have been printed over Rayquaza, but I'm okay with them picking Rayquaza EX. Darkrai does have 2 Worlds titles to its name. It's one of the only Pokemon to have, not one of the only ones, but one of the few Pokemon, the lucky, powerful few, to have 2 Worlds titles to its name. Did not get printed here. Probably 35th anniversary if they do something like this again. I imagine they're going to be running out of EXs to print, and they're going to print Darkrai. Gardevoir, Telepass Gardevoir, has 1 World title and 1 second place title to its name. One of the strongest cards of all time. Really should have been chosen, but they decided to go with Mega Gardevoir this time and Gardevoir from Delta Species for the last one. So missed out on 2 different runs of the set that it probably should have been in. Probably in like the top 30 cards to print in even just the initial batch, just because it's such a powerful card. Yet we've now missed out on it twice, which makes me a little sad. This card was pretty reasonably priced for a long time, but it's now finally started to become expensive, making it harder to build 2010 and 2008. Delta Ray we talked about being one of the best Delta Species Pokemon, both in EX block and in the 2007 format historically. It is also very, very expensive. Did not get a reprint. Promo Mewtwo is a card that's getting up there in price. It's a very playable card in base Fossil, in Licky Stall, and also historically, before the discovery of Licky Stall, this card was playable as an aggro card, and it gave credence to stuff like Sneasel for having that psychic resistance, for being able to body such a powerful attacker like Mewtwo. Mew Star is a very powerful star Pokemon for RSPK. This is not my favorite star Pokemon. Personally, I'd rather they reprint Latias, or Latios, or Rayquaza, in terms of cards I want to play for 06, because this card doesn't exist in 06. But they decided to just not go with a star at all, which I think is one of the biggest whiffs of the set. I think they did an okay job with this selection, but not picking a star feels like a huge miss, because stars are the most expensive kind of cards out there. They're like the most expensive like cards that you can play in your deck. So getting a reprint for those would mean a lot, especially a playable one. Umbreon Star printed last time is not that playable of a card. It's not unplayable, but it's not that playable. Getting a playable star would mean a lot. Unfortunately, we have to wait. Flygon Level X here. Again, I just said it's a better Level X than Palkia. It was like the star of like the best way to play Palkia, which was Palkia Flygon Stalgon in 2009. You don't call the deck Palkia Gon, you call it Stalgon. It's referring to the Gon. He's the guy. Probably should have been picked for the Level X. Magnezone Prime probably should have been picked for the Prime, but I'm not mad about Gengar. I think Gengar's a good choice. Blaziken EX, I think is a better pick than Delcatty, just because Blaziken EX is an expensive, iconic card. But I'm not mad about Delcatty. I am perfectly okay with that. Shining Charizard I picked just for somewhere to allocate Charizard that wasn't a base set Charizard print, but obviously they allocated Charizard to the base set print, so you can do something else with the Shining print, which they chose Celebi. I'm okay with that. I put Steelix here as a representative of the Metal Pokemon, which we did get Metal Pokemon with Zacian V in the set, of course. And I believe there's another one as well that I'm forgetting about right now. But we did not get the original Gen 2 Neo Metal represented in either reprint set. And Steelix, being the best of these by a country mile, was a very dominant strategy for just being a obnoxious wall. Zoroark GX was another huge whiff. Again, one of the strongest cards of all time. Arguably in that discussion for top 10 strongest cards of all time, and has not been printed in Celebrations yet. The original Celebrations did not go as far as Zoroark, so that had the excuse there. This Celebration did. He should have been picked over Solgaleo. These two together would have been very cool to see, because these were kind of like the yin and yang of playing 2018. You're either playing Zoroark or you're playing the guy that beats Zoroark, usually. Other than that, I don't have too much to say. They definitely had some big misses with the star, not including the transceiver, and some of their picks could have been better, like the GX pick is kind of the main one that bothers me. But overall, the fact that I got 10 of these right kind of speaks to the quality of their choices. And some of the ones they picked, like Gengar Prime, I'm not even mad about getting wrong, because that's still a good choice for that slot as a representative of like different mechanics while still being something that people want. And getting Uxie is the best possible gift I could have been given. So I am very happy about Uxie being in the set. Hopefully 35 is even better.